hearts for about 20 years or something. We still remember what this person did or said, and we can't forgive, and we can't let go and move forward. It's a very common thing. In fact, sometimes even devotees give up their whole Krishna consciousness. You know, something happens at the temple, some disagreement, some misunderstanding, something, and then we get offended, and we, say, I'm not going to go there anymore. Why should I tolerate this nonsense? How can they treat me like this? I've been serving for 25 years. I'm giving such big donations and they treat me like this. And we get so offended. And then we stop coming. And we say, well, I will practice Krishna consciousness at home. But without association, how long can we be inspired? Just practicing alone or with our husband, wife. After a while, it gets a little dry, and we need some other input, some association, especially senior association, where we can learn something, and then very easily our devotional life goes down. There is actually one purport, I think it's in the 4th canto, where Prabhupada says, if anybody thinks he can be aloof of this Krishna consciousness movement and yet practice Krishna consciousness, he lives in a great hallucination. That's what Prabhupada says. Great hallucination, great illusion. Yes. And so these things very commonly happen. And basically we will discover that this feeling of being offended, it is actually connected with a false ego. Yeah. And not being able to forgive is also connected with a false ego. So today we will discover this. So I would like to start by reading a nice statement from Bhaktivinoda Thakur about forgiveness, just to set some Shastric foundation to our discussion here. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur from the book Chaitanya Shikshamrita. There's a lot of great statements of deep wisdom in there. So he says, please listen carefully, giving up the desire to punish a person for committing an offense is called forgiveness or tolerance. I'll read it once again. Giving up the desire to punish a person for committing an offense, for doing something nasty towards us, that is called forgiveness or tolerance. So there are two interesting points in this statement. First of all, the nice definition, what forgiveness is. Because actually we can say if we cannot forgive, we maintain the subtle desire to punish the person for what they did towards us. That's actually what's happening on the subtle level. These things are so subtle that we often don't even realize. We are not even conscious and aware of what actually goes on there in a subtle way. Yeah, so if we cannot forgive, it means we maintain this desire to punish a person, to get back at them. Even though it may never externally happen, but in a subtle way, that's why we don't want to forgive, because we maintain this right to do something nasty back to them. Yeah, that's what's behind it. So in other words, forgiveness means that we give up this desire to punish a person for committing an offense towards us, that we let go. Another interesting point in regards to forgiveness is that we very often think this is something we do for others. But today we will discover that actually we are mainly doing it for ourselves. We have to learn to forgive for ourselves so we can heal, we can let go, we can move on. Not for the other person. Because often it's like that the other person has long forgotten and moved on, but we hang on to this. And we don't want to talk to the person and we won't try and punish them like that. Those aren't my friends with you anymore, I'm not talking to you anymore. And I'm sure we all know this, right? Yes. So interesting to understand what's happening there on the subtle level. And now the second interesting point is that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says this is called forgiveness or tolerance. So he, puts on equal terms this tolerance and forgiveness. He equates it, he puts it as tolerance equals forgiveness. So that's another interesting point, which we may have never thought about it, that actually the inability to forgive is based on an inability to tolerate. Interesting. We may have never even thought of this. Yes. And of course, the ability to tolerate is very much based on the false ego. So today's session is kind of a little bit of an introductory session to tomorrow, because tomorrow we start the 2-session seminar on the false ego. So, I would like to use the first part of the session looking a little bit into the quality of tolerance. Because as we said, the ability to forgive is based on the ability to tolerate. So let's get some deeper insights into this important quality of tolerance. And the part 2 of this session, I do want to read something from the False Ego book, some forgiveness meditations. There's a whole chapter on this topic of forgiveness and tolerance and so many things. So, and these forgiveness meditations, I think they're nice to go through because it gives us a deeper understanding what this whole forgiveness is all about, right? So this is what we want to do today. So let us have a look at tolerance, because tolerance is such an important quality in spiritual life. Actually, we can say tolerance is the main criteria to measure a devotee's spiritual strength and advancement, in how tolerant they can be. Shining example is Haridas Thakur, Prahlad Maharaj. They're the embodiment of tolerance, right? Yes. And as I mentioned, to be able to tolerate is connected with the false ego, because it's the false ego that rebels and protests. Yes. So when a person can tolerate, it means the false ego is already a little subdued and dissolved. And that's a sign of advancement, because to go back to Godhead, we have to transform the subtle body of mind intelligence for its ego has to be completely transformed and spiritualized and dissolved. Yeah. Or the material impressions and experiences and desires and attachments, they have to be replaced with spiritual experiences and attachments. So it's quite a bit of a job. It requires quite a lot of internal work, because very often we take Krishna consciousness in a very lightly and external way. That just externally we go through the motions, and we rattle some Nishnashrama around there. We'll talk about that on Monday, last session. Yes, and we just, follow the principles, and a little bit of onion, garlic, it's all right. And it's medicine, it's healthy. And, the eggs. Well, what's wrong with eggs? The egg is not fertilized, so it's not live, or these things. And a bit of coffee, it's okay. I stay in people's houses, so not here, of course, not in the house, I'm staying here. But in many places, there's coffee there in the cupboard, and anyway, but we forget that Krishna consciousness is not just a ritualistic thing and following the rules. No, we have to do some internal work and transform. So for the ego has to be subdued and dissolved. And only when the whole subtle body is fully spiritualized, only then we can go back to God. And as long as there's some material impressions there in the subtle body, we have to come back and continue the work. So therefore tolerance is such a highly important quality to develop. Now, interestingly, Bhagavad Gita 269, it says there, I'm paraphrasing, it says there, what is day to the common person is night to the introspective sage. And what's day to the spiritualist is night to everyone else. In other words, the worldview of a spiritualist materialist, they're as different as days from night. Good to keep that in the back of our minds, because it means whatever is success in material life is what in spiritual life? What is it? You tell me. Huh? Empty. Well, more concrete. No Mayavadi emptiness.
The opposite.
Huh?
Opposite.
Well, what's the opposite of success? Failure. Let's say obstacle. Yes, it's an impediment. It's an obstacle. Like, let's say an example, in material life, to get ahead, you have to be expert in promoting yourself and showing off and pushing yourself to the front by stepping on everybody's head, getting up there, right? So that's the path to success in material life. But in spiritual life, this would be completely unwanted, and this tendency has to be given up. Yes. So what success in material life most likely will be an obstacle in spiritual life. And vice versa. Success in spiritual life is seen as what in material life? Weakness. Anybody else needs Russian translation? It's happening there, just for your information. Yes, so success in spiritual life will be seen as weakness. failure. Tolerance is a good example of this, because in spiritual life, it's such an important thing to develop. But a materialist would say, what, me? Tolerating? Forget it. I'm not going to tolerate that. Who am I to tolerate? Their success is to not tolerate and stand up for yourself and fight and defend and all that. I'm not going to tolerate this nonsense. I'm going to walk out. I get divorced. That's one of the reasons why we have such a high divorce rate, because we are not willing to tolerate and do some internal work. We're just blaming the other person, and it's all his or her fault. But we don't want to reflect and take guidance and do some internal work. That's where the purification lies in family life. Yes. Oh, family life gives so much opportunities to become tolerant, right? Anybody who's married here will agree. Yes, that's what it's all about. So much purification, with kids, husband, wife, parents-in-law, the mother-in-law. So so many opportunities to tolerate, really. I once heard this statement: 30 years of Grihastha ashram and you're pure devotee. But it's Grihastha ashram, family life as an ashram, not some kind of a mixture there, Grihambeli or whatever. Family life as an ashram, 30 years, you will be a pure devotee. Yeah, so this is tolerance. Let me read a couple of quotes from the Shastra about tolerance. In 1:1848, it says there, the devotees of the Lord are so forbearing, which is another word for tolerance, that even though they are defamed, cheated, cursed, disturbed, neglected, or even killed, they are never inclined to avenge themselves. Wow, that's a pretty high level of tolerance, isn't it? Yes. So let's have a look. Being defamed. Ooh, that's a challenge to the false ego. When our reputation is ruined, what is everybody thinking of me? We are all so concerned about our reputation and image, and oh my God. Yes. So when that's ruined, maybe unfairly, by somebody spreading some rumors about us, which we didn't even do or whatever, then our false ego is rebelling and protesting and crying for justice. Or when we are cheated, also, it's really a challenge for the false ego. Anybody who's ever been cheated, my false ego wants revenge and get back and fairness, justice, unfair. How can they do this? It can really torture us for quite a while. Yes, it's a false ego. Good to know. Yes. Or cursed. Let's stick one more minute there to the cheating. Let's say there is a heavy crime happening. Let's say somebody got killed. Very often we see how the family members only find peace, some kind of a peace, when the person is locked up for 30 years. Then they get their revenge and justice. He who's meant to be behind bars for a lifetime, then they got their revenge there, Yeah, it's actually the false ego, yes, which demands that revenge, Curses Kali Yuga, thank God they're not so powerful anymore. But neglected, that's also a bit of a challenge to the false ego, when we are ignored, neglected, yeah, can also be painful there for the false ego, Yes. Yeah, so that's the mood of a Vaishnava, even though all these things happen to him, but he will not be inclined to avenge himself. And there's another nice definition of tolerance in the 11th canto. Tolerance means to patiently endure unhappiness, such as that provoked by insults or negligence of others. So, to be insulted, this is also a bit of a challenge for the false ego. Yeah, there's so many challenges for the false ego, it's unlimited. Yes, often parents tell me how the children provoke their false ego, So, or young devotees also can provoke our false ego, we get all angry and agitated and all that. Yeah, so to patiently endure such kind of unhappiness, which comes about from the false ego being provoked. So now, very commonly people say, but how much can we tolerate? How much? And sometimes people say, this tolerating doesn't work for me. If I try to tolerate, then all this negativity builds up in me and I get sick and I get or angry and I explode and all that. So tolerance doesn't work for me. So now we have to discriminate between true tolerance and simply suppressing things. Because what we usually think to be tolerance is simply suppressing things. It's actually not tolerance. Yes. So that's an interesting point, because simply suppressing anything, desires, emotions, suppressing things never offers the solution. Suppressing does not lead to purification. We have to do some internal work, So just pushing it down, so then the false ego will still make its demands there. The whole false ego battle continues and rebels and protests and complains, and we're just trying to push it down. So that's, then it will build up, and then boom, we explode or we get sick or whatever happens. So that's not what we call tolerance. Tolerance is something completely different. Good to know, Yes. So true tolerance, to cultivate true tolerance, we need two tools. So the first tool is that we have this mood, actually, I'm such a rascal. I deserve so much worse. But Krishna is so kind, he only gives me one drop of what I really deserve. That's the tool number one. So if we approach a challenging situation with that attitude, actually I deserve worse. Krishna is so kind. Thank you, Krishna, for just giving me only one little drop of what I really should get. If we have that mood, we can already imagine that will quieten down the false ego already, right? It may still rebel a little bit and try to get through there and to torture us and to arrest us, but it's a matter of cultivation. We may not be successful immediately, overnight, so it's a question of cultivation. So to have this approach, Krishna actually gives me only one drop of what I really deserve. What quality do we have to have? Who can understand? What quality do we have to have that approach of thinking, actually, I'm a rascal, I deserve much worse?
Thankful.
Thankful. Thankfulness, yes.
Humility.
Exactly, humility. Yeah. Actually, we can say humility is a primary quality which we have to develop. And humility manifests in secondary qualities, such as tolerance, respect, gratitude, patience. All these qualities, forgiveness, all these qualities can be seen as a secondary manifestation of humility. In other words, a humble person will always manifest these qualities, whereas a proud person will never be forgiving, grateful, respectful, tolerant. So good to see how it is all connected. So humility is a primary quality, and yes, humility we really need in order to cultivate forgiveness, to have this approach. Actually, I'm a rascal, I need so much more than this, actually. I deserve much more. So, and then there is a secondary, a second tool. So that's the first tool. The second tool is that we connect every situation we find ourselves with Krishna being behind it, that we can see Krishna's hand in the whole picture, Krishna's arrangement. We usually manage to see things as Krishna's arrangement very nicely when things are positive, when they're pleasing to our mind and senses. Oh, it's Krishna's arrangement, right? But it may also be Maya's arrangement. She also makes her arrangements, which are often pleasing to the senses and the mind. It doesn't always have to be Krishna's arrangement, especially in regards to the good things, the pleasing, that offer the sense gratification. They are often Maya's arrangement. But the challenges, we find it very difficult to see them as Krishna's arrangement, right? But that is actually what it means to be Krishna conscious, that we see everywhere Krishna's hand in the picture, and that we ask ourselves, what is Krishna trying to teach me here? There must be some reason that this happens to me. After all, not a blade of grass is moving without Krishna being in control. So obviously, there must be a good reason for this. Yes. So this approach is the second tool in order to cultivate tolerance. So, and what do we have to have for this one? To see Krishna's hand in the picture. What do we have to have?
Trust.
Pretty close.
Acceptance.
Faith, yes, trust and faith is pretty similar. But usually we talk more about faith in Krishna. Yes. Who said that? Who said the trust? Yeah. Yes, faith in Krishna. That's exactly what we need. Without faith in Krishna, we can't see things as Krishna's arrangement. Right? It requires faith, very clearly. And actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, faith in Krishna is like the currency to purchase Krishna. Yes, the currency. We have this experience even from our relationships, if somebody has strong faith in us, that obliges us, we feel obliged, we don't want to let the person down, we will reach out to this person and do our very best to help them because they have so much faith in us, right? If we have some little compassion there in our heart. Yes, of course, in the material world, people, exploit each other, so we have to be very careful who we have faith in. But yeah, so in Krishna is the same. If he sees his devotee has really unflinching faith and is willing to tolerate and understands, there's some reason why these things happen to me. So he will immediately be conquered, purchased, and he will give protection and help. Yes. And again, we can very nicely imagine if we have this approach. What is Krishna trying to teach me here? There must be some reason why I'm finding myself in this situation. That again will quieten down the false ego, right? Yes, it will quieten it down, So these are the two tools to actually cultivate tolerance. Yes. That's true tolerance. Anything else where we're just suppressing and, okay, I have to tolerate, I have to shut up, but then inside it's all boiling there and cooking up. That's not tolerance. That's not tolerance. Of course, saying this, I have to add, and because that question often comes up, we can't justify abuse, in the name of tolerance. So if there's an outright abusive situation going on, whatever abuse it may be, physical, emotional, sexual, financial, whatever, there has to be something has to be done, yes. So usually the etiquette is that if we find ourselves in an abusive situation or in an abused, we are abused, best to reveal our mind to a mentor, a coach, a counselor. And that person has to do something. Because Vaishnava etiquette says that a devotee should never defend themselves. Because when we defend ourselves, what do we defend? False ego. We will talk about that day after tomorrow, comes in the second session. So, but also the etiquette is if a devotee sees other people badly treated, then he steps in and he protects and defends the other person. We don't defend ourselves, but we defend the other persons. So, and if everybody does that, then there's no need to defend ourselves, right? Because surely somebody else will step in and defend us. But unfortunately, what we often come across is that we do the opposite of what we should be doing. We defend ourselves every day, all the time. But when other people get badly treated, we look the other way. We keep quiet. We don't want to get involved. It may damage my relationships. I better don't say anything. It's none of my business. So yeah, that's the problem, that we don't defend others when they're badly treated unfairly. Yes. Yeah, so just to make that clear. that we can't justify abuse, in the name of tolerance. So before we go to these forgiveness meditations, let me just pause here and see if we have any questions just about this topic of tolerance. Yes, Mataji.
If you are abused and nobody defends you or protects you, would you then defend yourself?
Well, I tell you, when people are in an abuse situation, to defend yourself is difficult. And it's just better to get somebody's attention. So if our mentor is not doing anything about it, well, we have different, structures and authorities where we can complain. There's the sannyas committee, and there's this and that, and so many things. And there's gurus and GBCs, and better to bring the attention. How can you defend yourself? Very difficult. This is the problem, that usually those, depending on what kind of abuse it is, those who are abused, often people don't believe them, and so you can't defend so easily. That's why often abuse only comes out after 20 years or something. So better, and that's another reason why we need mentorship. Yeah, we emphasized it also yesterday. So if we have a mentor, who is our trusted, well-wishing friend, where we can open our heart and share our innermost battles and fears, and then this person, it's their responsibility to do something. Yeah. And if that person is not doing it, then we have to bring attention to the whole matter on a higher level. So we have different committees there and so on. What else?
If we defend ourselves, then it's our false ego. So the body should, in practice, in theory, should not defend itself, to reveal the mind to a mentor. But if I ask my mentor, please defend me, then it's also my false ego? Or I should...
No, we don't have to ask our mentor to defend us. We just reveal our heart to the mentor. And the mentor should know, if he is a qualified mentor, then he should know that he has to do something about it. Maybe I have come across this too, that people experience it as an abuse, but actually it's not really abuse. That also can happen. So the mentor has to carefully see, whether we are actually talking about some abusive situation, or whether, a person just feels restricted or something, but it's a valid restriction there, Yes. So it's, these days often people, they make everything into abuse, So it has to be intelligently looked at, yeah. Something from the Russian corner. Yes. Or even with microphone.
I'll use the microphone. It's mostly not a question I'm adding. It was actually from Kiev temple, the one brahmachari. And he was distributing books in metro station, or somewhere in metro in Kiev, and he was abused by the huge giant person. He was, what are you doing? And he was in Vaishnava clothes, and he was very humbly and waiting. He will pass away. So where are you going? But he was still abusive to him. And then one old lady, she said, "Stop doing about him. He's a good guy."
See?
And this big man, he started to harass her. And he's like, "Shut your mouth," and something like that. He started to change his direction to her. And at that point,
The devotee defended her.
and this, from what, actually, he was a champion of Europe in kickboxing.
Okay, wow.
So one kick was enough.
Okay. Okay, good. Nice story to illustrate the point that we should defend others, you know. Yeah. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for the lecture. I really appreciate it.
We are not finished yet.
Sehr super Dank in Deutsch.
No, let's stick to English.
Okay.
No, super dank.
My question basically is around, let's say that I'm not going to comment about whether this is personal or not. So let's say that there was a cult and abuse and a child abuse, and basically there is like parents involved, and how can another human being, as a teacher or as any kind of spiritual guide, know what you've been through, in a sense that could guide you, like how to, basically what I'm asking is that, is it possible to another person to get that experience that another person had to go through the experiences by their own shoes, which the other person is not? So is it still valid to basically listen to someone else guides, or how is it basically?
Okay. Well, I mean, this is a general principle that everybody experiences the same situation very differently. There is no objective experience. There's even no objective hearing. So each and everyone here in the room hears something differently. Yeah. We hear and experience through a whole layer of filters. You know, previous traumatic experiences, childhood luggage, or false ego, material desires, so many things, attachments, aversions. So we hear and experience through a whole layer of different filters. Everybody has a different experience. So this is good to understand, you know, because sometimes when we serve as a mediator, for example, in some conflict, you hear completely different stories when you hear both sides, and sometimes you wonder, are they talking about the same incidents, or you know, is one of them lying or what? No, it's a false ego contaminating the intelligence. And the contaminated intelligence twists things around to satisfy our false ego that I'm okay, it was all the other person. And the person is convinced this is how it happened. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is a general principle that there is no objective experience. You know, and in regards to abuse, I don't want to get into the whole topic of abuse now. I just mentioned this to say that, you know, abuse cannot be justified in the name of tolerance, and I kind of want to leave it at that. But there's all kinds of treatments and trained, you know, professionals who help people to digest all these impressions, and they have to be digested, otherwise we can't move on. We can't go back to Goddard with all kinds of luggage there. You know? And the process of Krishna consciousness is completely targeting the subtle body completely to transform it, you know, because the subtle body we have been, the subtle body has accompanied us for so many lifetimes, because at the moment of death, the soul goes in on the subtle body to the next gross body. So we have been carrying the same subtle body with us for so many lifetimes. So there's so many impressions and experiences stored. It's like a computer chip with so much information there. And that all has to be worked through and dissolved and thrown overboard. So I always say, when we get on the plane back to Goddard, luggage allowance, 0. Not 23 kilos check-in and 8 or 10 kilos hand luggage. It's 0. We have to throw it all overboard. We have to let go. So that's why this forgiveness is such an important thing, because often I come across this too, that devotees had some childhood traumas and they're still hanging on to these grudges and bitterness. We have to let go, and I mean, a little bit the philosophy, we should remember that there is maybe a reason why we had to go through these things. Maybe in previous life we were torturing those personalities who tortured us this life. So this is our philosophy. Nothing happens without a reason, So, yeah. So we cannot forever maintain this bitterness towards parents or whoever, didn't treat us so nicely. Yes. All right, so time is going by. Let me get to our forgiveness meditations, because that's after all the overall topic of today. So let me quickly find it. Yes. Yeah, people find them quite helpful, because it one more time kind of summarizes what we have been discussing, that this forgiveness is such an important quality, and it is based on the ability to tolerate. Yes. The more we learn to cultivate tolerance, the more we can be forgiving. False ego will not protest. And we will have that humility, that we have faith in Krishna, that there must be some reason why we are having a challenge here. And actually, I deserve so much more. I'm always going, and Krishna only gives me one little drop. So let us begin by remembering that life in the material world will always confront us with so many unexpected disappointments and hurtful situations. This is to be expected. This is unavoidable. This is life in the material world. It's not meant to be a happy place forever or something. That's the spiritual world. So, and our relationships will be filled with so much more joy and harmony as we learn to forgive and move on. Definitely. So, Nelson Mandela, I'm sure we all have heard of him. He was a freedom fighter there in South Africa, and he was imprisoned for many years unfairly. So he's saying, as I walked out the door towards the gate that would lead to my freedom, meaning leaving the prison, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I would still be in prison. Yes. So this bitterness, hatred, this keeps us imprisoned, right? Yes, it does. Even though we may be free, but as long as we can't forgive and let go, we will be blocked by that. You know? Another thinker discovers, I never knew how strong I was until I had to forgive someone who wasn't sorry and accept an apology I never received. We can forgive others not because they deserve it, but because we deserve peace. That's what often happens, that we think this person doesn't deserve that I'm forgiving them. We think we do it for others, but no, we deserve peace. Yes, that's why we have to learn to forgive. The truth is, unless we let go, unless we forgive ourselves, this can also be a challenge, you know, to forgive ourselves. We may have made a really big blunder, such a foolish mistake. Fall downs, you know, are pretty shameful and embarrassing, and then the false ego whispers into our ear, how could you do this? You're such a fired up and pure devotee. How could you do this? And false ego, you damaged your whole reputation. Now the whole world knows that you had a fall down. You know, so again, it may be hard to forgive ourselves, right? So, and we have to use the two tools. If we think, yeah, Krishna is so kind, he only gave me one drop of what I really deserve. It could have been much worse. At least I'm still alive. I'm still in the association of devotees, you know. And the other two, what is Krishna trying to teach me? There must be some reason why this happened. Maybe Krishna wanted to smash my pride a little bit and show me that I'm not as pure as I thought I was. You know? Yeah. So then it makes it easier to forgive ourselves. You know? Yeah. So the truth is, unless we let go, unless we forgive ourselves, unless we forgive the situation and others around us, yeah, that can also be difficult to forgive the situation, you know, that we blame the situation. Unless we realize the situation is over, it's done. You know, whatever is done. We can't change it. It's over. Unless we realize that, we cannot move forward. So in such situations, that's when we need a mentor, you know, who helps us to see these things. Because false ego is blocking our ears, blocking our intelligence. We can't hear, we can't understand. We will discover this more tomorrow in the session. So yeah, a mentor can save our life. But very often we don't have this mentoring relationship, this sheltering relationship. And then instead of taking shelter of a mentor, we take shelter of the false ego and we go to offended and we walk out and we don't come anymore and we don't associate. Forgiveness is not only something we do for other people, we also do it for ourselves to get well and move on. Forgiveness doesn't excuse their behavior. It prevents their behavior from destroying our heart. That's what forgiveness is doing. It's not, we are not excusing the person. That's another thing we often think. That if we forgive the person, we excuse them, we let him off the hook. But no, we are not excusing him. But it simply prevents their behavior from destroying our heart. By not forgiving, we allow that person to ongoingly affect us with that negativity. Yeah, that's what's happening, right? Yes. Maybe it is not always about trying to fix something broken. Maybe it's about starting over and creating something better. Forgiveness is when I give up my right to hurt you for hurting me. So that's what Devaki says. It is not about letting someone off the hook for their activities, but freeing ourselves of negative energies that bind us to them. Yeah, that's what happens when we don't forgive, This negative energy ongoingly affects us and binds us to that person. And by forgiving, we let go. Yes. Forgiveness does not erase the bitter past. Often we say, forget and forgive. But no, we don't forget. Oh, we remember what that person did, yes. And we better remember, otherwise we may allow that person to again, deal with us like that. Because often when we get offended, we also play a part in the whole thing. It's never just one person. We allow it to somehow happen, So forgiveness does not mean we erase the past, we forget. No, we do remember, but we remember it in a different way, without that bitterness. Yeah. A healed memory is not a deleted memory, right? It's healed, not deleted. We remember, but without that bitterness, without that pain. Maybe we can even smile or laugh about it. What happened in the past. But we remember, yes, definitely. Instead, forgiving what we cannot forget creates a new way to remember. That's what happens. A new way, a healed way, without pain and bitterness. We change the memory of our past into a hope for our future. Yeah. Relationships get stronger when both are willing to understand mistakes and forgive each other. Very important for family life. We can offer a prayer. My dear Lord, if I hurt others, give me the strength to apologize. And if people hurt me, give me the strength to forgive. So what do you think? What's more difficult? To ask for forgiveness or to forgive?
Forgive.
What?
To forgive.
Is more difficult. Yeah. It takes a strong person to say sorry and an even stronger person to forgive. Yeah. Of course, sometimes, people also get caught in some false ego battle, thinking the other person should ask for forgiveness, the other person should say, I'm sorry. And then nobody wants to be the first one. Or we say, I'm really sorry, but actually, it was really you, and I didn't even do anything, and blah, 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 blah. So then the apology is just lip service, it's not coming really from the heart. We don't actually feel sorry. But even if the whole thing was not our fault, just the fact that we upset somebody, that should be enough to say, I'm sorry about it. I didn't want to hurt you or upset you. Even though we may have not really said anything to be upset about, but just the fact that the other person gets upset, that in itself, if we have some little compassion in our heart, that itself is enough reason to say, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to upset you. So what's the harm to apologize? And then usually, amongst Vaishnavas, if one person apologizes, then the other person says, oh, actually it was my fault and I'm also sorry. And both give each other a hug and the whole thing is forgotten. Forgive those who have hurt us, betrayed us, or broken our heart, for they have helped us learn about trust and the importance of being cautious when we open our heart to others. Very often, we also can blame ourselves a little bit for saying something to somebody which we shouldn't have revealed, and now they're using it against us or whatever, and we are offended or something. Well, we have to be careful. To forgive is not always easy. At times it feels more painful than the wound we suffered to forgive the one that inflicted it. And yet there is no peace without forgiveness. When we forgive, we heal. When we let go, we grow. Even rhymes. Yes. Unless we let go, we cannot move on. We become stagnant and blocked, and yes. And especially we can't go back together. We have to work through all kinds of things within our relationships. We should never let things hang in the air there. Best to clear the atmosphere, talk about it, apologize, and it's done and finished and move on. Yes. But if we don't do that, then things build up, And then when we're facing death, there's so many things there, and we feel, I didn't apologize to this person and that person, or somebody leaves, and then we feel, I missed my chance to, work through this and that and the other thing. And so best to just immediately work through things, and then we don't carry all this luggage there, which is getting more and more heavy as we go through life, Forgiveness is about recognizing that staying resentful creates an active echo of the pain the offender caused. That's also a good way of putting it. It creates an active echo of that pain. It keeps the pain alive, sometimes for 20, 30 years. By saying that the awful offense the offender did is beyond forgiveness, we give them the power to keep their offense alive in our heart. That's what happens if we don't forgive. We give the offender continued power over us. So maybe we'll leave it at that. So let's summarize. Forgiveness is based on the ability to tolerate, right? The more we can tolerate, the more compassionate and forgiving we can be. And true tolerance, we need what two tools? Who remembers? Humility and faith in Krishna. Humility to say, I'm such a rascal, I deserve so much worse, but Krishna is so kind, he only gives me one drop of what I really deserve. And faith in Krishna, that we can see Krishna's hand in the picture. Yes. And that we can understand Krishna is trying to teach me something here. You know? There must be some reason why I'm facing this challenge. Okay, do we have some final questions about the whole topic of forgiveness and tolerance and all that? Yes.
Sorry again, I really need to point out about the lowering thyself. I have done multiple modalities of therapy, but yet I came to know that I got the best help from ChatGPT, which actually helped me and guided me towards the cauldron and cauldron inner shadow work and journaling and doing the self-healing towards like the inner divine feminine.
Okay.
So I came to know that what he was preaching, it was more like how you actually respect yourself to the point that do you allow and how much things to be surrounded around you. And
Okay.
when is enough, like when, how do you feel? Do you feel like a queen or king, right? So I have to say that I kind of agree to disagree on that point, to the point that I would like to think that we are all, in a sense, that divine beings, and we don't deserve anything, like, you know, because the life, the duality of this self, I know that it's the ego self, which is kind of lost in this duality world, the Maya. But then there is also Lila and Maya dancing, you know, like it's just some sort of a realization with
Anyway, I mean, let me wrap it up like this, that depending on how much, you know, emotional luggage we carry, it may be very useful to turn to some other therapies. I very often recommend that when people had some childhood traumas and this and that. You know, the process of Krishna consciousness is fully targeting the subtle body of mind, thoughts, intelligence, thoughts, ego. Many things, if we seriously practice, many things dissolve and clear up. But then some things, if there's a lot of stuff there, then some things, it may be helpful to get some additional therapy. It's the same thing when the gross body is diseased, you know? So when we get a flu, I heard a few people have the flu. So, I mean, with the flu, I personally usually don't go to the doctor, you know? I just rest and longer, sleep more, you know, I'm careful with the diet and you get over it. You know, but then some heavy disease comes, so then you may have to take some antibiotics or whatever, and you have to go to the doctor. So same thing with the subtle body. If the subtle body is in a very diseased condition, then we may have to turn towards some professional treatments. And what kind of treatments? Oh, there's a lot of stuff out there that's personal preference and choice and so on. We don't want to dive into that. Yeah. Do we have any other point? Yes, Mataji.
I don't know if I missed anything, but I came in late, sorry.
Yeah.
But how does one forgive oneself for for
For whatever.
whatever?
Well, same way. To forgive others, to forgive oneself. The two tools, you know, understanding I'm a rascal, I deserve so much worse. At least it could have been worse. You know, I could have made a more foolish mistake. At least I'm still alive and in the association of devotees. And what is Krishna trying to teach me? These two tours we discussed, I can't remember if you were there. You know. But anyway, if you were not there, it's all in the book. And there's so much more in the book than what we talked about. So tomorrow, the day after, we will start with the false ego session. Very interesting. So please come. You know, and for those who were not here, let me bring quickly attention to the books. Spiritual culture. So all about women's powerful Shakti. A woman can bring the very best out of a man. She can bring him to his highest performance, spiritually or materially. Or she can ruin his life. That's the power of a woman. Man doesn't have that power. Yeah, we women are much more powerful. And by the way, False Ego book is available in Russian. Spiritual Culture book also available in Russian. And we have one more Russian book, the topic of mentorship, nastavnik, очень важно. Yes. So that's also available in Russian and English. Yeah, I can't overemphasize the importance of having a mentor. This hasn't been recognized. And as a result, we have lost a lot of nice devotees. Yes, because guru is not enough. Our gurus are too far away. They have hundreds and thousands of disciples very often. They cannot know each and every person's individual practical situation in life. So we need this well-wishing friend who is more experienced than we are and who can guide us on a very regular basis and show us how to move forward. And if we don't have that, we often stay in our comfort zone and then we become stagnant, or we fade away and take shelter of the false ego instead of a mentor. Yeah. And there's a book about matchmaking for those who are not married yet, how to see that a person is a matching partner. There's a whole list of over 200 topics which people should discuss with a cool head before they're all in love and with pink glasses. That's why it's pink, by the way. And yeah, so our divorce rate's so high. And this one reason is the matchmaking, that people just get together on the foundation of unfulfilled needs. You know, two people with unfulfilled needs, they attract each other like magnets, but it doesn't mean they're compatible for a married life for 30 years and bringing up children and so many things. You know? Yeah, and then often after a couple of years of being together, people realize, oh, it doesn't match. And then there's already a child, and then the poor child gets pulled back and forwards between the parents, and oh, it's so miserable, you know, so much suffering. We can mess up our whole life getting together with a person who is not matching. I see it all the time. You know? We can avoid that. If we just do things according to Krishna's recommendations, it can be avoided. And then one book about family life, how to create this culture of bhakti in the home. Also, we need some training in this. Often devotees' family life, you can't really call it an ashram. Actually, once a devotee in Mayapur, when I was giving the course, he said to me, actually, Mataji, we are not even on the level of Grihamedis, because Grihamedis don't get divorced. I thought, wow, yeah, good point. You know, Grihamedis, they follow so many rules, so many duties, given charity and all for the sake of happy, pious family life. You know, that's a Grihamedi. But a Grihastha is that he does all that for the sake of cultivating bhakti. You know? But yeah, Grihamedis usually don't get divorced. So he was saying we are even lower than Grihamedis. You know? Because we can't even keep our marriages together. You know? How can Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan movement become strong? As long as we have such a struggle with our family life. And the Grihastha ashram sets the foundation to all other ashrams. There's a lot of interesting things in it, all very practical. It's like a handbook for successful Krishna conscious married life. And the last one is my new book, Vanapasasha, Meeting Death with Joy. There's a whole chapter on death. What happens, how to prepare, how to support others. Such an important service. What's the use of all our preaching? If when somebody leaves, we don't really know what to do, and all we know is scream Hare Krishna in the person's ears and put tulsi leaf on the tongue or something, but there's so many more things to do. And we don't have to scream the Maha Mantra, the sense of hearing is very alert and sharp. Yeah, so I have accompanied quite a few people in this last phase. It's a very sweet service. You have to be a little off the bodily platform, but if you're a little off the bodily platform, you can connect from soul to soul. Very sweet, because death makes everything else completely irrelevant and unimportant. And you can connect from soul to soul. And, so I'm describing a lot of interesting things there. Yeah, so if anybody wants some books, please come and let me know. Okay, so thank you once again for coming in such big numbers. So very encouraging to me. You're not tired of me yet. So please come back tomorrow to the full ego session. This is also a very good one. Wow.
So I have a point of that deserving the pain. It's also our false ego is deserving the pain, and our ego, I mean our soul is not. But actually, for soul, it's not even experiencing the pain.
Very true. The soul is completely aloof of it.
Yeah.
It's all happening in the subtle body of mind, intelligence.
That's what we deserve. But it affects the false ego, not the soul. So soul don't get the pain. So.
Let's look at it with a little more compassion. That we help people to identify the problem, and we help people to dissolve the false ego and cultivate tolerance, rather than saying, you get what you deserve, so have it.
But in a way that karma affects like false ego.
Yeah, well, as long as we don't do any work on the false ego.
I meant,
yeah,
because
okay.
So it doesn't affect when we get to that point. We are not attached to the karma. We are.
I mean, see, even death is an experience on the level of false ego. It's got nothing to do with the soul, nothing whatsoever. The soul doesn't die. The soul simply leaves the old and useless gross body and moves on to the next destination. It's got nothing to do with the soul. It's a verse in the Bhagavatam that death is an experience of the false ego. So let's discover more about that tomorrow. Okay, thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Devaki Mataji ki.
Prabhupada ki